On stage at Lazaretus Hall, actor and director Jonathan Goad, scholars Jyotsna Singh and Alexa Alice Joubin, and actors Maev Beaty and Graham Abbey. The ringmaster is Ideas producer Philip Coulter. We're calling this From Page to Stage.
So let's move on to Troilus and Cressida, a play that's not produced very often. And it's a play about the Trojan Wars in which the Greek warrior Troilus falls in love with Cressida. Cressida then gets traded to the Greek camp where she becomes the lover of the Greek soldier Diomedes. It's a play about small human tragedies against the big tragedies of war. And this is the scene where Troilus and Cressida are introduced to each other, where they fall in love and swear eternal faithfulness. I want to turn first to Jyotsna and Alexa. Jyotsna, starting with you, can you set the scene for us? What's important about this scene?
I think it's, on one hand, it's the story of the Trojan War. It's what was called the matter of Troy in the Renaissance. But it also feels like the most modern of Shakespeare's plays, because there's this sort of self-reflexivity, the indeterminacy of language. It's a play very obsessed with language and the mediatedness of language. And this scene is kind of really interesting because although it's a wooing scene and a love scene, it has an extremely kind of contemporary modern vision in which all those idealized notions of love are kind of, deconstructed. And one last thing I'd like to mention is in all these plays, we are looking at the Renaissance concept of wooing. Nobody uses the word wooing. That's what I tell my students, what is wooing? And it's like not something they think about. And so here you have a very different wooing scene to other plays that many plays of Shakespeare.
Alexa, over to you for a minute.
Echoing what Jyotsna said, I wanted to say this wooing scene is the first encounter of the lovers, is flipping Romeo and Juliet on its head. In Romeo and Juliet, you have the really romantic love at first sight scene, the balcony scene. They swear their love to each other. Marriage is at the center of that concept. Marriage is never mentioned here. No marriage is ever mentioned. And so I say it flips Romeo and Juliet on its head because the gender relations here is really, I think that the kind of romantic love being portrayed here is a parody. It's a parody of how superficial love is. And that's really important for us to understand this art play that combines tragic and comic modes all at once. The formality of marriage is never mentioned here. It's really about lust and kind of deconstructing it in front of our eyes.
Before we go to reading a section, Johnny, any comments on the scene?
The scene itself, I just wrote a series of questions. Is this a grim, ironic foreshadowing? Does innocence prevail, or must innocence prevail to make this scene work within the context of the play? And yet I still find, no matter how many times I've read this scene, I find it oddly foreboding and not beautiful. So those are my thoughts on the scene.
Turn to the two of you. Maev.
I have nothing but curiosity about this scene. It's one of the plays I'm the least familiar with, and this woman is complex, and so I have questions about propriety, and I have questions about her desire, and I have questions about her sense of romance. There's a lot of confession of appetite, as you reminded us it's called, on her part, and of course that comes up against what is proper. So I think this would be a wonderful beginning point because it does feel like pure curiosity.
Graham.
Yeah, so many thoughts. I mean, that war is ever present in this play, and there is a press and a pressure in their love, and they're young. One thing we talk about as actors often is a sense of a world picture, and I was going to say in that last scene we read, I would classify that world picture for both of them as almost loss, that they both approach love as loss, as something they're missing. Here you've got two young lovers who live firmly in the world of love and large love. And what happens naturally, because one thing we're avoiding here, perhaps the elephant in the room when we talk about academia and actors, is that we take those words from the page and we make them oral. I mean, and these plays in essence were an oral medium. And when you listen to these plays and this language, you hear an energy and a rhythm and a music, as we talked about. So in that last scene, what happened as Orsino got more worked up is you felt the horse, the gallop of that language push forward. And you're going to hear a different rhythm here with the prose, and then we're going to hear a very different one in Shrew. But all of those rhythms are something about the oral medium of this language, which actors have to negotiate as well. So.
Okay, shall we, let's try the scene. Pick it up with line 61, I think. Whenever you're ready.
Will you walk in, my lord?
Oh, Cressida, how often have I wished me thus?
Wished, my lord? The gods grant. Oh, my lord.
Well, what should they grant? What makes this pretty abruption? What too curious drag espies my sweet lady in the fountain of our love?
More dregs than water, if my fears have eyes.
Oh, fears make devils of cherubims. They never see truly.
Blind fear, that seeing reason leads, finds safer footing than blind reason, stumbling without fear. To fear the worst oft cures the worst.
Oh, let my lady apprehend no fear. In all Cupid's pageant there is presented no monster.
Nor nothing monstrous neither?
Nothing but our undertakings, when we vow to weep seas, live in fire, eat rocks, tame tigers, thinking it harder for our mistress to devise imposition enough than for us to undergo any difficulty imposed. This is the monstrosity in love, lady, that the will is infinite and the execution confined, that the desire is boundless and the act a slave to limit.
They say all lovers swear more performance than they are able, and yet reserve an ability that they never perform, vowing more than the perfection of 10 and discharging less than the 10th part of 1. They that have the voice of lions and the act of hares, are they not monsters?
Are there such? Such are not we. Praise us as we are tasted. Allow us as we prove. Our head shall go bare till merit crown it. No perfection in reversion shall have a praise in present. We will not name desert before his birth, and being born, his addition shall be humble. Few words to fair faith. Troilus shall be such to Cressida as what envy can say worst shall be a mock for his truth, and what truth can speak truest, not truer than Troilus.
Will you walk in, my lord?
Well, you hear you hear the prose and the ability to sort of pull that music, but it's thick stuff.
Well, there is that thing there in it. I mean, in many ways, Troilus sounds pretty wooden, as it's kind of a bit of a clod, maybe,
Well, a soldier.
Mm-hmm. But this is a woman who's very nimble and very quick, and she clearly knows men. I mean, she's quick with the one-liners. Mm-hmm. So I guess part of the question that I'd throw out is, what's Shakespeare telling us about love in time of war? Any takers?
I think the war part, what is really interesting is it is a Trojan War, but it was the war that was started for Helen. So I think that in the early parts of the play, there's a lot of discussion about, shall we end the war? Shall we give Helen back? And she was the ideal. So in that sense, the Troilus and Cressida is also a love story about desire and wooing. So it kind of complicates it. In terms of, I think, the challenge for actors that you mentioned, that on one hand, this can be very acerbic, it can be dark, it is almost a parody, as Alexa mentioned. So how do you convey feeling in this very thick, dense language? And I think that's what the play is grappling with, is these different registers of language that these characters are grappling with, because these characters are also conscious, we are coming from the story of Troy. So that's why I think in the sonnets, Shakespeare is also constantly questioning the language of love and desire and the limits and the problems.
The scene begins and ends with, we were walking we're walking, my
walk
Lord,
in,
right?
yeah.
How did you envision, I'm interested in social spaces and physical stage spaces. The two of you, this is a radio play right now, but were you on stage, were you envisioning walking opposite to each other? You know, what kind of spaces do the characters inhabit?
It's interesting when you start to put movement in and think about it, because there's certainly opportunity. I didn't think of that. Of course, if it's in motion, then those times when you stop become interesting, right? The times when you re-engage movement become interesting. A great actor here once said, never move unless it improves on stillness. but that has to do with the instinct of why you would move forward, where they're going. So they're all interesting questions for a director probably to negotiate. But when you talk about love in the time of war, what you get in this play is putting certainly women on pedestals, but also Troilus puts himself on a pedestal, which is and that's what gets that stiffness. He there's a stiffness to the understanding of love here, and stiffness maybe is wrong. A pedestal nature to it, putting it up on something that can't be achieved or taken down. And of course, that sets up the fall in the play.
Yeah, I think the repetition is always a great thing to look at. I mean, part of what process would give us is the chance to look for all those clues. I mean, I love working with these particular artists because I know we're all super nerds, and so we are like dogs with a bone about all the clues that the text is giving us. And so I think pointing out this repetition of "Will you walk in, my lord," is a wonderful reminder. And for a woman to say, "Will you walk in?" Anytime you're saying in or out, you mean ambiguous things. And so that double invitation, combined with her, is it authentic or feigned, politesse in the upcoming session is, that's a lovely tension.
Can we just finish up with this? It would be fun to go on and read some more from the scene, because things really heat up a little later.
Yeah, I think we want to hear those speeches.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
And they kiss. My lord, I do beseech you pardon me. 'Twas not my purpose thus to beg a kiss. I am ashamed. Oh, heavens, what have I done? For this time will I take my leave, my lord.
Your leave, sweet Cressida.
Leave, and you take leave till tomorrow morning.
Pray you content you.
What offends you, lady?
Sir, mine own company.
You cannot shun yourself.
Let me go and try. I have a kind of self resides with you, but an unkind self that itself will leave to be another's fool. I would be gone. Where is my wit? I know not what I speak.
Well know they what they speak that speak so wisely.
Perchance, my lord, I show more craft than love, and fell so roundly to a large confession to angle for your thoughts. But you are wise, or else you love not, for to be wise and love exceeds man's might. That dwells with gods above.
Oh, that I thought it could be in a woman, as if it can, I will presume, in you, to feed for aye her lamp and flames of love, to keep her constancy in plight and youth, outliving beauties outward with a mind that doth renew swifter than blood decays. Or that persuasion could but convince me that my integrity and truth to you might be affronted with the match and weight of such a winnowed purity and love. How were I then uplifted? But alas, I am as true as truth's simplicity, and simpler than the infancy of truth.
In that I'll war with you.
Oh, virtuous fight, when right with right wars, who shall be most right? True swains in love shall in the world to come approve their truth by Troilus. When their rhymes full of protest, of oath and big compare, wants similes, truth tired with iteration, as true as steel, as plantage to the moon, as sun to day, as turtle to her mate, as iron to adamant, as earth to the center, yet after all comparisons of truth, as truth's authentic author to be cited, as true as Troilus shall crown up the verse and sanctify the numbers.
Prophet may you be. If I be false or swerve a hair from truth, when time is old and hath forgot itself, when water drops have worn the stones of Troy, and blind oblivion swallowed cities up, and mighty states characterless are grated to dusty nothing. Yet let memory from false to false among false maids in love upbraid my falsehood, when they've said, as false as air, as water, wind, or sandy earth, as fox to lamb, or wolf to heifer's calf, pard to the hind, or stepdame to her son. Yea, let them say, to stick the heart of falsehood, as false as Cressida.
Just before we move on, just listening to that, I really get the sense that we're listening to almost a different play. It's as if in the first part of the scene, the war is still there, forcing them into a kind of gender role about, what a man should say and what a woman might say. And now it's all fallen away. You've forgotten that there's a war going on, and it's just two lovers finally just saying what needs to be said.
Or you remember there's a war going on because you cite the stones of Troy will someday shred. Cities themselves will be dusty nothing. But what will hold? Love's truths and falsehoods.
But also famous last words. I suppose that's Cressida.
Yeah.
Comes true.
Yes,
So
but you feel that rhythm change too from these short, nervous exchanges to these long runs
Certainly.
of stretches of language and gushing. That music is beautiful.
Yeah.
On Ideas, you've been listening to From Page to Stage, a discussion from the Stratford Festival about the challenges around issues of sex and gender in staging Shakespeare's plays. Our thanks to Jyotsna Singh and Alexa Alice Joubin, and to Stratford Festival company members Jonathan Goad, Maev Beaty, and Graham Abbey. The program was produced by Philip Coulter. Our web producer is Lisa Ayuso. Technical production, Danielle Duval. Our acting senior producer is Lisa Godfrey. The executive producer of Ideas is Greg Kelly, and I'm Nala Ayed.